Okay. Thank you everyone for this opportunity. I wouldn't want to start without knowing at least your name and where you are connecting from. At least those should be the prerequisite since we are meeting for the first time. And from the information I gathered, this workshop will kind of be a recurring one. We'll meet at this time every week for 4 times. So, with that opportunity to meet you again, I think it is best that I know you, at least know your names, despite, seeing your names, on the screen. I can always call you, but at least have that opportunity to introduce yourself, just your name and where you are connecting from. Then we can forge ahead. Who will want to go first? We can go in any order.
All right. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Mary Pascal Iwundu. I'm in Nigeria, precisely Port Harcourt. I work in the University of Port Harcourt. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
My name is Ebenezer. I'm based in Nigeria.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Kanisi Otanyanyewa. I am a Zimbabwean, but I am a diplomat, and right now I'm deployed in Minsk, Belarus, in Eastern Europe. It's quite cold here now. Thank you, Professor.
Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ambrose. I'm from Benin City, Edo State.
Okay, you are in Edo State currently?
Yes, Nigeria.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. My name is Abawatiyu. I'm from Ethiopia.
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
Good afternoon. My name is Munetsi Madakfamba. I'm based in Harare. I work for Sub-Regional Research Center. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other person want to come in?
The 60-40 chance.
Okay. You are not mandated to introduce yourself, so we can always forge ahead. But if you still want to introduce yourself, you can now, use the chat box and type it. So we just
Okay, my name is Lorena Ukoro. I'm from Nigeria.
Okay.
I am a PhD student and also running my master's program. I'm also a teacher, a lecturer, and also a quality management expert. Thank you.
Thank you. Impressive. I would want us to go ahead and mute ourselves so we don't interrupt in the meeting, and the workshop. I didn't want it to be a webinar because I wanted people to also, contribute.
I introduce myself.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, I am Doris Akatuku from Nigeria.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Taiwo, can you mute yourself? Taiwo Bemi, can you mute yourself? I think yeah, Degu, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Taiwo Akintade. I'm from Nigeria. I'm a travel consultant.
Thank you very much.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
Hello. Okay.
I can hear you. Can you speak up?
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Leon Orota. I'm from Tanzania. I'm a geospatial data scientist.
Yeah, thank you. Impressive. Any other person want to come in? I just want to give
Yes.
everybody an opportunity today. Yeah, sure.
Yes, my name is Okero Omot from Gambela region of Ethiopia. Currently, I'm working for Unishare as a information management systems.
Impressive. Thank you. Any other person?
Yes, sir. My name is
Joseph.
Chimere. My name is Joseph Chimere Omere. I'm here from Nigeria, and I am an academic. I lecture in a university.
Impressive.
Joseph.
Yeah, thank you.
My name.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe we'll continue next time, but I didn't want to leave anyone out. If anyone still want to introduce themselves, the opportunity is still there. It's our first time, so I don't mind, since I'll still meet you for the second, third, and fourth time, we would just take our time and, check the workshop off our list. But in absence of no other introduction, I'll just go ahead and share my screen because I will definitely, speak to you from the screen. I wouldn't want to just speak from heart or something of that nature. So you can also understand me better. And especially since this is writing, it is something I see that is, technical. It's not more like an oral or communication studies for those of us in the humanities. So it's something that I see as things that have procedures and have steps, and it will be okay if you are seeing some samples and some explanation on the screen. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen and as well introduce myself because I have my bio pulled up on the screen. Just let me know when you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen now.
Can someone let me know what can you see?
Surviving the storm of academic and research writing.
Okay, thank you. That's what I want you to see. Just give me a moment. Let me. Oh, wait. Okay, can everyone see the screen now?
Yes.
Yeah. Still, we are seeing the same thing.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I want you to see the same thing. All right. So I titled this workshop Surviving the Storm of Academic and Research Writing. And from the introduction that I gathered, I think most of us have already done something related to research. It can be our final report, or most times we call it project in Africa, but sometimes it's called report here. And thesis or dissertation for those in the PhD, and thesis for those in the master's. So some of you introduce yourself as PhD students, so that means you may have done master's or you already have a bachelor's degree. So that means at some point in your education, or at some point, in your program, you reported a kind of a writing that, mandated you to do a research or to, gather primary or secondary resources to just do an academic writing in general. So I know to where that we struggle with this often, more often than not, especially those who are not in the humanities. So I hear people oftentimes say, I'm in STEM, I'm in social science, I'm in business, so I'm not really into writing, I'm not really into research. But that's not actually the truth, that's not actually the case, because every profession, every discipline, has to report something. You always have to write, so that's why we have different types of writing. We have technical writing, especially for those in the STEM field. And we also have academic writing. We have research writing. We have reports, it can be, Martha, can you please mute yourself? Yeah, thank you. So we have different types of writing, depending on your profession, depending on your field. So I don't think anyone can say that it doesn't concern them. So it is generic to everybody. It is generic to every field. So that's why I kind of titled this Surviving the Storm of Academic and Research Writing. And my title came out of the fact that where I work at the University of Tulsa as a writing consultant, most times students just walk in to, for consultation or to consult a consultant for them to look through on their essay. And we get to find out that what they actually want to work on is just citation. Everybody just want to do citation. Everybody just want to know whether they cited well, But oftentimes we end up, doing other things, with them as regards their essay, as regards the article, their, writing. So I see this as a storm. I see this as something that goes beyond citation, something that goes beyond manual style, to something that we also have to follow the process from the beginning. How can we tackle research and academic writing? So that's about the title. So we're going to run this concurrently for four weeks. So we are going to meet some other time, by this time next week, for this. But to give a little introduction about myself, I'm from Nigeria, as most of you who also introduce yourself, connecting from Nigeria. I'm a PhD student in the Department of English and Creative Writing at the University of Tulsa here in Oklahoma, in the US. Yeah. So I have a Master's of Art in Teaching from Duke University in Durham, North Carolina. My primary research interest, because I'm a research scholar, so my primary research interest is in politics in modern African and 20th century British literature. And I also have other research interests that cut across African cultural studies and as well African Jujuism. So most of you know about Juju. So Juju is our term. So African Jujuism. Then I also do some things on women, in the global South. And currently I'm working on, I'm doing an eco-critical study on literature that responds to, the depleting ecosystem or the depleting environment. But my focus is mainly on world wars, especially World War I and the Nigeria's Niger Delta. Most of you from Nigeria will already know that Niger Delta has come to be with us. There have been so many upheavals, discordant tunes, in Niger Delta, and there are literature that have kind of, looked at it, reported it or thematized, the preoccupations happening in Nigeria's Niger Delta. So I'm currently working on that now. So I believe with this little self of me, or these little things I'm doing, I'm able to share my, experience or my little expertise as regards academic and research writing. So at this point, I don't know if anyone has any question before I go ahead with our agenda. You can unmute yourself and speak, yeah.
The question one of the students asks is it possible to record your...
Yeah, I'm already recording it, yeah. I started recording some minutes ago, so yeah. I will send it to Professor Siri so you guys can have access to it. Is that question answered?
Please, Prof, I would like to kindly ask all students to please mute their mic, please, to avoid interference. Thank you.
Honestly, I share in your sentiments. I will also want everyone to mute themselves because, this is not, for example, a village meeting where, where we always do the Ubuntu spirit, people can always talk and, stuff like that. So I believe we are all graduate students, we are all, in the academia, and this is more like a conference, and let's just, be more organized and grab the stuff. Then everybody can just, go about their other business, because I know most of us have other things to do, yeah. So thank you very much, Ijoma. Is it Ijoma or Ijoma? I'm trying to. Just help me. I want to pronounce your name correctly.
Yes, it's Ijoma Joseph. Ijoma Joseph.
Ijoma Joseph. Yeah, thank you very much for raising that up. All right, so this is the bigger picture, and we are not going to cover everything today. Like I told you, Ab initio, we are going to run this for 4 weeks, so I will meet you some other time. So we're going to focus on academic writing, research writing, conceptual and theoretical framework, then paragraph structure, then citation and style manual. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know most of us, if there was this feeling of excitement when you heard about the workshop, it was all about, coming to learn about citation and style manual. Yeah, definitely. We get that a lot at the Writing Center here at the University of Tulsa. People just want to know, did I cite well? That's just what I want to learn how to cite. I want to know what's the difference between APA and MLA, or what is Chicago style, what is Tubman. These are the 4, top lists. There are other citation styles or other style manuals, but these are the, top 4. So people just want to know this, but oftentimes we've discovered that you miss out on certain things in your maybe first drafting or in your intro paragraph, or your thesis are not always strong. Your thesis are not always aligning. Your hypothesis, is not that strong. The primary and secondary sources you organize or you picked or you selected for your research, it's not really a good conduit to analyze. And, a kind of, it's not really a good conduit to analyze your hypothesis or your claim. So because of that, I was like, okay, we should just start the whole thing from the beginning before we get to the citation and style manual. So if you are here because of the citation and style manual, just hold your horses. We'll get to that point. But then I promise you, there are other things you will notice. There are other things you stand the opportunity of learning, when we start the whole thing from, pre-writing, like drafting stage, first draft stage, and outlining. You also notice other, you might also notice an easier step to even get through research, because I tell people research can really be time consuming. Most of my friends are in creative writing. So after our masters, some persons went to creative writing, some persons got an MFA because they just want to write from their imagination. But research and academic writing doesn't work that way, because it can even take you like 3 or 6 months to finish one particular article that you are writing, because it's intense. It's not just only coming from your mind. You have to consult other writers. You have to consult other scholars. What have other scholars said in this that, what have they said that you will also want to, add to? What did they miss, that you will also want to cover? What is that academic, that knowledge gap that you'll also want to fill? What would you want to extend? These are questions, these are areas to work on this. And there is no research route you want to take that would not include you, sourcing for sources, going to gather materials or trying to do a literature review. There is none. And that is where the conundrum comes into. That is where the whole tricky stuff about research comes into, and that's why people most times shy away from it or have problem with it. So I use the word academic writing. Academic writing is like an umbrella. So under academic writing, academic writing is a formal writing, either as a form of definition paper or argumentative essay or a narrative essay or a research paper. And also, it can also be technical writing. For some of us in STEM, STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, and math. For most of us in STEM, what you always write, like what you mostly commonly write, is called technical writing, but it's also a form of academic writing because you can also, go ahead and source other materials or get, information from what other scholars or what other researchers or what other scientists have done or have said about that particular field you are writing on or you are researching on. So all these things are part of academic writing. So it can be a definition paper. In a definition paper, you can be asked to define a concept. So for example, you might just ask to write about business in West Africa, for example. So business in West Africa becomes a concept. You just want to write on that. So that can be a definition paper, or that is a definition paper because you are about defining a concept. You might just want to write about, I just want to diversify my knowledge. I'm in the I'm in the humanities, so I don't want to be using my own terms a lot. I want to use other things. So you might want to write about, can someone give me an example? Sorry, I'm not in your, just give me an example of any time in your profession or in your area. For example, from my own destiny, I can decide to write about Abiku. Abiku is Ogbanje for some of you who are from the Igbo part of Nigeria. You know about Ogbanje. Then if you're from Yoruba, it's called Abiku. It's a concept. I can decide to write on it, so it's a definition paper. So can anyone just go ahead and mention any concept, maybe in your own area? Investment, yeah. So investment that happen to be in business, right? Or economics or something related. Yeah. Any other volunteer or contribution? Yeah, go ahead, Ambrose.
Maybe African continental free trade.
Okay, let's take it one after the other. Yeah.
Now I was saying African continental free trade.
Yes.
African continental what?
Free trade area.
Free trade.
Yes, area.
Yeah. Cool. African continental free trade area. And that happens to be an international business, right? Cool.
Yes.
The concept. Let's get more to.
Yeah, financial technology in Africa.
Financial technology in Africa. That's a concept, So one more before I go ahead. I have to check my time.
Livestock management.
Livestock management. Thank you very much. So these are concepts. So your academic writing could be definition paper, like all the concept you've mentioned. So you are just going to write on that concept. It could be argumentative essay. So most times what we do in academic writing or in research, we always argue. You are arguing for, you are arguing against, there is always, what are you arguing? What's your claim? Martha, do you want to say something? If you are not saying anything, just please mute yourself. So I was saying we always argue. So most times you hear people say, what's your claim? What's your hypothesis? What's your thesis? That has a lot to do with argument, because in academic writing or in research writing, more often than not, we argue, we're arguing for a point, you're arguing for a claim. Then the next thing is, as graduate or undergraduate students or people working in university or in the academia generally, the essays you write in your program are, for the most part, academic writing. Martha, can you mute yourself? Martha? Fine. Please, if you are joining now, please mute your. Wow.
I'll mute them from your end.
How can I control this?
You can mute everyone yourself.
Yeah, I don't want to leave this page. to make me cannot go. I want people to be contributing, so I don't want to mute everyone.
You can make Ijoma and a couple other people co-hosts, and they can help you mute people who are talking.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So I have to stop sharing my slides for me to do that, right?
Well, if you can find them, you can just.
Okay, let me make it Ijoma. Ijoma, you're a co-host now, right?
Yes, I can see that. Thank you, sir.
Okay, please help me. Thank you. Can everyone see my screen?
No, not yet, sir.
Ademidu.
What about now?
Yeah, it has come.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I was saying that as graduate student, most stuff we do is academic writing. You know, it can be what our professor have asked us to turn in. You know, so sometimes your professor might ask you to respond to a prompt or ask you to choose a concept to write about. You know, definition paper, we already talked about concept. Or it might be a review, you know, review of another research or another article. It can be a research itself. So these are expectations, you know, that we always, you know, obliged to meet in graduate studies or even as undergraduates too. But in graduate studies more often because it's always, you know, more research oriented than undergraduate. So in most academic writings, you will have to cite primary or secondary sources as evidence or example to buttress your point. I will just highlight this, you know, what we mean by primary and secondary source, but there will be, you know, a section where we'll discuss, especially when we are talking about citation and style manual, we'll discuss it extensively. But just a kind of, in a nutshell, primary source are original materials, you know, that, you know, gives you raw data, which you can use and, you know, support your claim or your hypothesis. So when we talk of original, so emphasis is on original and raw data. So that's where the emphasis lies, because you need to differentiate primary source and secondary source. Most often, we don't always know the difference between these two things, but it's fine. We're going to get through it. So when you're talking about primary source, or when I say original data, so it varies according to fields or according to profession. For example, in the history, if you are in the history department or discipline, primary source could just be things like diaries, you know, things like maps, things like clothing, especially all those things that existed in the time period you are talking about. So if you are talking about, you know, the Civil War, the Nigerian Civil War, if there is any clothes, if you could find any clothes that belong to any soldier, whether a Biafran soldier or a Nigerian soldier, so that particular material, that is an original material that existed in that time period you are talking about. And that particular material is also can be a raw data, can serve as a raw data for you to back up your claim or for you to kind of use and support your hypothesis, depending on what you are writing about. So it could be diaries, you know, it could be letters, you know, letters written by, you know, the person who existed in that time period you are talking about, but that's for history. So if you're in the humanities like literature, so it's always the text that, for example, novels written by authors. For example, Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart is a primary source if you want to write anything that is Afrocentric. I used to have a paper that I wrote about women, you know, and I reference Achebe I cited Achebe because there was something he said, so I lifted it. So Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart is my primary source. It's a primary source that I use to argue for something in my research. So it's a primary source for people in the literary studies. Then for those in, let's say, politics, or for example, I know I said I was not going to talk about this extensively, but I'm already discussing it extensively. I couldn't help it anyway, but let me just end with those in politics or yeah. So if you are in the area of politics, for example, census, some surveys, maybe you are doing something on population or you are doing something on election. So those ballot box or the ballot slip that was used in the election during the election period. So those things serve as primary data because they're original. But when we talk about secondary data happens to be what you as a researcher did with your primary data. So, for example, I have a paper that I wrote about women riot of 1929. So that my paper is now a secondary source to you as a researcher who would want to extend or a kind of cover some knowledge gap in something I may have missed. Can someone let me know if everyone is following? So
yeah, we are following.
Okay, thank you very much. Because sometimes I feel like I'm talking to myself alone, but it's fine. Yeah, thank you. So secondary sources are, like research or books or articles that have been written on primary sources. So it now serves as a secondary source. So sometimes, as researchers, most of you know about literature review. For those who did project in undergraduate, so you get to there's a section of your writing, you say, okay, this is literature review. What are you doing in that literature review? You are kind of synthesizing what other scholars have done in a particular field. You don't bring in your primary source in literature review. You don't do that most often. Most often than not, you don't do that. You are looking at what has Nebo said and what has Chikodiri said in this particular issue. What have they said? How did they interact? This is where you now make those scholars or those researchers interact. And what you are bringing, those researchers' views or those scholars' view are coming from a research that they did on where they employed a primary data. So secondary data is a kind of a paper or a research or a book that has been written, about a primary data or where a primary data was employed for them to write that in. So for example, at the end of this workshop, I might ask you to just do a definition paper. At the end of your definition paper, you discover that you've referenced some primary data and also you've referenced some secondary sources. But that your work serves as a secondary source because you also included primary data as well as secondary data. So that's it about primary and secondary data. But it doesn't end there. We also have tertiary data or tertiary source, but we are not going to talk about it because I just wanted to make a highlight. So I think I have to, pace fast a little bit because we don't have much time, and this meeting is also being recorded, so you can always get the recording. So talking about drafting your essay, let's look at responding to a prompt. I talked about responding to a prompt. So this like an example. So I will go ahead and read. There has been a debate about whether schools should pay college athletes since they generate billions of dollars in revenue for colleges and their sponsors. Write a 500-word or less essay, either in support or against paying college athletes. Here in America, for example, there are student athletes who we also call college athletes, and it's a big thing whereby they, go out of their way to, bring honor and valor to the university, especially when it comes to competitions and all this. So we are assuming that there is an argument, ongoing, whether to pay them or not to pay them. People are already arguing, or people are already kind of suggesting that they should be paid since they also generate revenue. So look at what your professor have asked you to do, to write a 500-word or less essay, either in support or against paying college athletes. So in responding to a prompt, there are steps that you should follow. And the step one is specify the essay requirement in your prompt. So most times we always carried away by the whole subject or the whole issue. in the whole issue as regards to context. And we forget our requirement, we forget the expectation. So the first step asks you to specify the requirement in the prompt. What is that expectation? And the expectation is not in the first sentence. The expectation lies on the second sentence, which that's where, especially from the part that says, write a 500-word or less essay, either in support or against paying college athletes. That is where you place focus on. It doesn't mean that you should ignore the first sentence. No, the first sentence builds up your background. First sentence builds up a kind of, gives you the concept of what we are talking about. But what is expected of you, what your professor expects of you, is to write a 500-word or less essay. So if you write more than that, you are not meeting the expectation. If you don't argue for or against, you are not meeting the expectation. So most time we miss out in these things. We just go ahead and start writing about college athletes and how they did this, how they did that. But meanwhile, the expectation was for you to write, in not less than 500-word essay. And in that essay, you should either support or you should kind of oppose that motion of paying college athletes. And the second thing is that you should use a prompt for your introduction paragraph. So the prompt here is asking you to write 500-word essay or less, and for you to either support or a kind of oppose that motion. So you should use it for introduction paragraph. And how you can actually do this is using it to develop your thesis. Because your introduction paragraph, we have two basic sentences. This is just like in a little context. I know in the full research writing, your introduction can have like more sentences than you could imagine. So, but here we are kind of following steps, and we want to get it from simple to complex. So generally, it's just two major sentences or two major statements. And your first statement is a kind of a background that you build about the issue in question, about the topic in question. Then the second statement is your thesis. So we'll talk about thesis, as we, go over to other slides. But you should use your introduction paragraph to do this. Sorry, you should use your prompt to create that introduction paragraph. And the next thing is to pick your mail plan. So most time when we talk about mail plan, it is like main idea, evidence, analysis, and link. There's always an idea. There's always a main idea. There can be supporting ideas in your essay, but there's always this main idea. What are you arguing? What is your claim? What is your hypothesis? That your claim can have subclaim. That your claim can also have other things that builds it up, but there is always that main claim. There's always that main idea. And you should also, when we talk about evidence are like examples. That's, examples, or it can be references. That means sources that you cited, maybe secondary or primary sources. So you gather them together. So imagine we are writing on college, on whether college athletes should be paid or not. You already have your introduction paragraph, which has your intro paragraph and your background statement and your thesis. Then this mail plan, you always pick your mail plan when you are writing your body paragraphs. So if you're writing your body paragraph, you always have to employ the mail plan, because the mail plan will go from main idea, evidence, analysis, and link. So that your main idea you're already building up in the body paragraph is coming from the thesis in your introduction paragraph. So thesis is always, okay, what are you arguing for? So I'm arguing for, okay, I'm in support of this, because the prompt here asks you to either support or to oppose. So let's assume you are supporting that college athletes should be paid. So you're you're establishing that claim in your introduction paragraph, which is the last part of your introduction paragraph. That is where your thesis has to stay. I'll still show you this thing when we go over to the other slides. So that's where your thesis has to stay. Then that your thesis specifies the order through which you want to arrange this. Maybe you are supporting that college athletes should be paid because of reason 1. You're also supporting that college athletes should be paid because of reason 2. So as you laid it out in your thesis, that is how your body paragraph need to go. So if I read your thesis as a professor, I need to see that reason 1 in your first body paragraph. I need to see reason 2 in your second body paragraph. So in your first body paragraph, where I'm already seeing the reason 1, I also need to see what evidence do you have to back your reason one. So maybe your evidence happened to be a newspaper report of how college athletes did this and did that. So that happened to be your primary source, right? So you collected that data, you collected that, and you referenced that in your paragraph, because you are like, okay, blah 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 blah. Then you supported it with this evidence that, for example, coach so they say something about student doing this in the daily news report. So you've kind of added an evidence. Then the next thing in the meal plan is analysis. How will you interact? How will you kind of interact that your evidence and your main point? How will you buttress it? How will you make it overlap? How will you kind of flesh it out and tell us this is why this evidence stands to support this idea, this main idea? Then after you've done that, the next thing is a link. So the link can be to end a paragraph or to lay out another sentence that will transition into the next sentence. If that paragraph happened to be your last paragraph in the entire essay, so that your link will not link into a next paragraph, that your link will now be a summary of that paragraph. But if that paragraph is just your first body paragraph and you still have to transition into another paragraph, your link will just have to be a statement that will transition to the next paragraph. I understand that this thing might not really be clear because I'm a kind of talking, explaining it than demonstrating it. So let's see if we can go over to something that, gives an example. So for example, here you are asked to define a concept. Like I already talked about definition paper, so I won't spend more time on definition paper. It can be on any field: humanities, business, science, food, environment, and politics. So the steps is for you to pre-write. That's always the first step. But I'm just going to highlight these steps because there is a particular section we'll discuss about it, extensively. So pre-writing is all about brainstorming and outlining your points. Then the next thing is your first draft. So your first draft is always seen as a rough draft. And this rough draft, you just do it from mind. You don't look at anything. You are non-judgmental about yourself. You are not cautious of your grammar, whether there is any grammar error or whatever, no, or punctuation errors. No, just go ahead and draft your point, according to your thesis, according to the point you generalize in the first step, which is brainstorming and outlining when you are outlining your point. Then the next thing will be for you to revise. Then in your revision here, you have to strengthen that point that you drafted in your first draft. You have to strengthen it. If there is need for you to arrange some paragraph, you just have to arrange. At this point, you are not seeking for perfection, but you are kind of looking at alignment. You get, so if there is need to rearrange paragraph or rearrange sections, you do that. Then the next thing will be for you to edit. Then after at this point, you've pre-written and you've kind of drafted your first draft or your first essay. Then you've revised it to see whether, okay, looking at this thesis, should it be here? Looking at this paragraph, should it be here? Don't I think that this paragraph should come before this one? So that's revising. Then the next thing now is for you to now focus on the grammar. Because while developing those paragraphs, there may have been some grammatical errors, but you didn't pay attention to it. For example, subject-verb agreement, because I think when I will be talking about this extensively, we have to talk about the tenses you should be using as a researcher. Because if you are in the humanities and you are researching or you are writing a paper and you happen to reference a primary source, you have to use a simple present tense. So your verbs should always be in the simple present tense. Like Okonkwo, throws Amalinze the cat. So you won't say Okonkwo threw Amalinze the cat. Despite that Achebe started things fall apart, by saying Okonkwo was well known throughout the 9 villages and even beyond. No, your destiny is Okonkwo is well known, so you report a literary text in the simple present tense. But if you are a kind of referencing or citing a secondary source, for example, in his book, International Business, Osiri reported that. You won't say Osiri reports, no. So if you are reporting a secondary source, you use the past.
Sorry, Prof.
Yeah,
please,
can
you come again? Can you come again, please?
Okay.
Can you come again on that?
That part is important, right?
Yes, yes, very important.
Okay. Yeah, we are all victims. We make that mistake. Okay, let me go again. So if you are reporting a primary source, you already understand what I mean by primary source because we talked about primary source and secondary source. So primary source
Yes,
are
yeah.
the original material. Yeah. So if you're reporting a primary source, your verb should be in present tense, like simple present tense. Example, simple present tense, like I brush my teeth every morning. She goes to school every day. Those verbs, goes, brush to show action that happen every time. So despite the verb that have been used in the primary source, so I used Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart because it's an iconic African novel. So Achebe has a book that says, Achebe has a part in that Things Fall Apart. He said that Okonkwo was well known throughout the 9 villages and even beyond. His fame rested on solid personal achievement. Let me end there. So let's assume you wanted to lift this part and it is instrumental in your research. And you were like, according to Achebe, maybe 1958, yeah, definitely 1958. You're like, the character of Okonkwo is well known. So you are not going to say Okonkwo was, because it's a primary source and because it's a literary text, you are going to use the present, simple present tense. So it will no longer be was, despite Achebe use was, despite the action has already happened in the pre-colonial era. But if you're using it in your research, it has to be in present tense. But if you are reporting something that someone had written, let's say Charles Nnolem, because these are also other African critics, Charles Nnolem or N.S. Emenyono, maybe they wrote a paper or they wrote a book on Chinua Achebe or something of that nature. Then you'll be like, Emenyono reported, Emenyono exerted, Emenyono opined. So it's no longer going to be Emenyono reports that so thing happened or Emenyono opines that. So when you are referencing a secondary source, like something a scholar has written, you use the past tense. But when it is a primary source, like a literary text, use the present tense. You tell the story alive, despite the past verb that was used in the original text. Is that clear?
Yeah, it's clear. It's clear. Thank you so much. Thank you, bro.
Okay, yeah. Just know that I'm always an email away if you want to send me something to look at and see if the verbs, again, it's consistency. So sometimes we forget about it, so we are not always consistent in it. So it can be confusing, but I'm always here to help. So after editing, checking for grammar and clarity of thesis, the next thing will be proofreading and your final submission. During proofreading, I don't know if you are like me. I know that it's a habit I have to change. It's a bad habit I have to change. I don't like showing people my work, but it's not good. So there's what we call peer review. Most of you have heard about peer review, and that's why you are always seen as a researcher of reputable, level if you submit to peer reviewed journal, because these people have. Peer review journals have a means of giving that your work to different peer reviewers to review before they publish it. So you can do this on your own. When you get to this proofreading point, you can proofread or you can send it to someone to look and peer review for you, give you comment, especially constructive comment. We're not going to talk about how to give comment in reviewing. There is a lot in this thing. And when you are done at this point, you can now submit for publication, or if it was a requirement, something that was expected of you by your professor, you can now send to your profession. That's why I wrote final submission here. We don't have time, but then this is like, I'm not going to talk more about this. This is just like a layout of what I mean, everything I've been talking about. So I lifted a research paper that I've written. I presented this paper at Carleton University in Canada in May. So I kind of I revisited about women's movement for social justice, kind of looked at whatever, not whatever, but what they did from 1929 to 2019. So this is like, let's see. So when doing this, the first thing is always to write your general or background information on that topic. So look at our topic. Our topic is revisiting about women's movement for social justice. So the first thing I'm going to do is to bring out a general or give a background information on this topic. Then the next thing is always, why does it matter? Why am I writing this? So sometimes your readers can always be, okay, why do you want to tell us about something that happened 90 years ago? Why does it matter? So you always ask yourself that question. Why this thing I'm writing, why does it matter? And if you always ask that question, you will not miss out that point of explaining to your readers why something matters. And that will be the reason why you will stand out, why people will always cite you. Sometimes you see in some researchers' profile, they've been cited like 900 times and all that because they've written something that matters. So why does it matter? Always ask that question. And the next thing will be your thesis. So I understand when I was talking about introductory paragraph, I didn't talk about why does it matter. So because I just wanted to lay a simple foundation, you get. But these are always things that should be in your introduction paragraph. General information, why does it matter? Or so what? Then thesis. For example, this is my background information. I kind of I chopped off some parts because I just wanted to use it for teaching purpose. Yeah. So I was like, in many countries at some point, a group of women have had to speak out against injustice and women's oppression. It is a very old custom. In November 1929, women in Aba, Nigeria, staged a mass public demonstration against what they saw to be an abhorrent tax administration, demanding justice and an end to it. Known variously as riot, rebellion, or war, the Aba Women Revolution was a demonstration of more than 25,000 women against the suspected taxation of women by the British colonial administration. I've given a background statement on this because I'm revisiting about women's movement. So I've just given a background statement. And this background statement, you can get it in the Google. You can just use your Google and you get the same information, something like this. So why does it matter? Why am I writing about it? Even after other researchers have written something like this. Why does this topic matter to this society? Something that happened 90 years ago or more. Why does it matter? So that now brings us to why this research matters. And I have this. Nigeria's women's revolution, which dates to the colonial era, has had a profound impact on the country's history, and with the same tenacity, established a basic discourse on women's representation and rights in society's economic and culture. This is why this paper matters. It matters because it's not just a custom, but it has had some effect on the society. And you can't talk about the nation's history without talking about it. So that is why it matters. It has some tenacity and it has a kind of brought out women's discourse in the society, especially in a society where, more often than not, women are always relegated in so many and disadvantaged in so many economics and political and social structures in the society. So this is why it matters. Then what do I now want to do personally? What do I want to claim? What's that my claim? What's my hypothesis? And that will now be my thesis. Yes, I've told the world why it matters, why this paper matters. Okay, they're interested. They now want to know, why am I arguing here? What is my hypothesis? What is my claim? Because I'm not the only one that have written this. People have also written about it. But what's that my personal interest in it? That will now be my thesis statement. Therefore, this article examines the effect of this revolution. Take note of the sentences or the comment that I highlighted with a red ink, because those are my main ideas. And those are the things you are going to see in the essay when you read my body paragraph or my sections. Because I'm going to talk about the effect of these revolutions. So therefore, this article examines the effect of this revolution. Yeah, go ahead, Onyebisi. Did you want to say something, Onyebisi? Okay. Yeah. On societal economic development, focusing specifically on the Aba Women's Revolution from 1929 to 2019. This movement have upheld women's rights and have had enduring positive effect on society, particularly on the market system, the economy, and sociocultural paradigms. So looking at my highlighted statement, I just want to talk about the effect of this revolution. And I want to talk about its effect on the economic development in the society. And not just that, I'm no longer focusing on 1929. I want to show the trend of the effect of this revolution. So that means it's not only one revolution. So it's not just the whole thing that happened in 1929. I'm following the trend to 2019, and this is 90 years trend, like 90 years, will I say, stops that I'm going to do until I get to 2019. And that is something new. That is a knowledge gap I want to cover. I don't want to talk about my research more, but I just want to use this and tell you, like, this is how your thesis come up. So it's either that your thesis is extending a research that have been done, or your thesis is a kind of arguing that something is missing, or your thesis is a kind of saying, okay, this thing could also be this way. So your thesis will always be doing one purpose that another person have not done. So sometimes, in a nutshell, I define research as looking at what everybody has looked at and doing what no one has done. And I believe we should end it here because we have 2 minutes left. But these are common mistakes we make in research, and I want us to take notice of it, especially passive voice. I wish I would have time, but passive voice is always when the performer of an action is in the subject position, is in the object position. And we always advise students to avoid this. So performer of an action is like the subject of a sentence is the performer of an action who performs an action. So if you say that John kicked the ball, John is the performer of that action. So John is the subject of the sentence. So he's always on the subject position. The performer of the action is always on the subject position. That is where it should be. And if he's there, we say that it is an active voice. But if the performer of that action is not in the object position, if the receiver of the action, if the receiver of that action is not in the subject position, we say it's a passive voice. For example, you say John kicked the ball. So the ball is the one that received the action kicked. So if you now say the ball was kicked by John, that is a passive voice. So we always advise researchers or students in the academia to avoid passive voice. Always use, active voice. Example, the taxation on men was imposed by the government or by British government. Always avoid things like this, and always look out for the word by, because it's the common preposition that lures us to use passive, voice or to make passive statements. So instead, we should say something like the British government imposed taxation on men. So let the performer of that action be on the subject position, which is always at the beginning of the sentence. And that thing is shortcut or style. It's that, because don't use this in academic writing. You can use it in informal writing. Maybe you're writing a letter to a friend or you are chatting with someone. But don't abbreviate anything in academic writing. Lastly, the use of etc and end. I know this is not trendy now. A lot of scholars don't talk about it, but it's true. Do not use etc or etc in academic writing when you are listing. Instead, use end to proceed the last item on your list. Don't use etc. It's not professional. Example, we can say it affected the economy, politics, market, etc. Don't do this. Please don't do this. It doesn't sound professional. You can use it in any other form of writing, but in academic writing, don't. Instead, you can say it affected the economy, politics, and markets. Then I know what is in your mind. Something is in your mind now. What if you have a list that goes beyond these 3? So that's why I always advise that you cannot alternatively say it affected many sectors. Then with a comma, now use including the economy, politics, and market, meaning that other things are also on the list, but you just wanted to limit it to these 3. It's 10 o'clock. Ask me questions. Sorry that I had to rush this. But it's a recorded version. We can always get the recording. Comments, question. Yeah, Okelo, right?
Yes, true.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much, teacher, for giving us the very impressive highlight about how the paper had been designed. Actually, some of them are familiar with us because some of us is not the first time to write the paper, but the way you design today a little bit can be unique because in paper writing, actually, there is a money design. There is a money way the people used to involve. But you give us a very, very impressive way today, which other scholars did not look at into, as you said. The design is very, very, very good. And also, I want to ask you a question about. You say that you need to design the way that other scholars do not use it before, because we are using the format. Because if you use the other way that other people do not design, yes, it will look good, but other people also will questioning. How do you just see in that cases? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Okelo. I really appreciate for your good comments on my slides and my design. Then coming to your question, yeah, we get that a lot. We said follow the traditional way. That means keep on doing what other people have been doing. Sometimes some professors just want you to work on what they are already doing, and they don't want you to break away from that shell. It can happen. We get this. I even asked a question like this, at a conference sometime last week. But the thing is, we're all contributing to academic knowledge. We're all contributing in this field, and I don't see the reason why you shouldn't do something different. But there is nothing you will do that is new. I just want you to know this. Everything that you want to do will kind of be an extension on something others have done. So even if you want to do something new, whatever that you want to do that is different, you are showing us that the reason why something is different is because there is something that is standing already. There is already an established fact, and you now want to break away from that established fact. That means you are still going to recognize the presence of that established fact. Else, we will not see whatever you are bringing as being new. I don't know if this makes sense. If you don't, you can't say this, I have a new knowledge. No, that means there is an existing old one or existing knowledge you want to consider as being old. Yeah. So I don't see a way for us to bring in something out of nowhere. When COVID-19 happened in 2019, 2020, some researchers were like, oh, nothing has been done on this, nothing has been done on this. We don't have primary sources, we don't have secondary sources. And I got published in one anthology. The way my professors were calling me, in Nigeria, they were like, can you send us that? Because they were like, they saw it as it is that we are facing scarcity of resources for any research on the COVID. No, something that happened 100 years ago about the bubonic plague. It's something like that. Yeah, these are resources, because it was a pandemic. It was a global pandemic too, despite it didn't get to some part of the world, but it was also a global pandemic. So nobody can come out and say that they were the first to write something on the coronavirus or how a virus almost, threatened the whole world. No, there is nothing that is new. You're only adding to existing knowledge. So I don't see anything wrong with you doing something different, but there is no way you can do something different without existing knowledge.
Yes, thanks very much, teacher. It's very clear. Actually, yes, the purpose of research means to find the gap or to extend the existing gap. But if the students are allowed to use their potential and bring something new, that is a good opportunity also, because they can use their potential to innovate as something that does not exist before, as you said. Thank you.
Yeah. For example, here at the University of Tulsa, there is a kind of a robot that now deliver food to people wherever you are. The robot will find you, will come there and deliver it to you. You just have to use your phone app and make order. Somebody cannot tell me, hey, I've created something new. No, because we had postal services where people could walk from a particular point to meet you at your home and deliver something. So whoever came up with that robotic idea built it on an existing activity of people delivering this thing. So you now imagine, okay, why don't I have a robot that will deliver it instead of people? So you won't tell me it's a brand new idea. It's a brand new is relative. The word brand new is relative. There's nothing new in this world. You either build on existing knowledge and create something different. I will use the word different, not new. Thank you very much for that. That's really an interesting question. Any other comment, or we should call it a day here?
Please, can we get the slide?
I will ask Professor Sri to, send it to everyone. I don't have your emails, in person. Then one last thing, let's not forget, before I go, if you want to do this, it's fine if you wouldn't want to, but if you're already working on something and you want to use this for this exercise, can you see my slide? Can you see my screen? Sorry.
Yes, we can see.
Yeah, you can see something like workshop exercise.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we can see.
Yeah. So I just want, if you would want to, you can draft a one-page introduction of a paper on the topic you have decided on. So if you already have a topic you are working on and you want to use it, or if you have something in mind, just for the purpose of this class, because at the end of every week, I'll be like, sorry? Okay, Ebuchi, if you can mute yourself, I will appreciate. So you can just use this as an exercise, because what we are doing in this workshop, if you only listen to it and you don't practicalize it, it won't stick. So writing is not something you come to listen, it's something you do. So I'm imploring you, if you want, I will also send out this material. And there are also other materials I will send that will help and guide you. What I just need from now to next week is an introduction paragraph, nothing else. Using the slide that will also be sent to you. If you can be able to draft a one-page introduction of a paper on the topic you have decided on. So your introduction should just follow the steps we treated: background, why does it matter, and thesis. Then I think it will be a good thing, because at the end of this workshop, we are going to develop your topic into a full-blown paper, and we don't know where you could submit it. It can find a home in a journal, who knows, something of that nature. Yeah. It's an activity, it's optional if you want to, because I think what we are doing should be practical then. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Okay, now on active and passive voice. Let's imagine that I had this your material, I needed to make reference to it. So I have it as AMA 2024 gave tips on what to avoid in academic writing. He listed the use of etc and. Now I'm looking at the word he. Is that accepted in academic writing?
He?
The use of the personal pronoun he. Yes, please.
It's accepted. Definitely, you should identify. You shouldn't keep on repeating my name, because the purpose of pronoun is to avoid repetition of the noun. You get? Yeah,
But those are things that are considered to be avoided as well. The use of he, the use of she in literature review. I don't know if it is different in liberal science, but in science, it's not accepted. I don't know if it is different in liberal arts, but in science, it's not accepted. So that takes me to the point of a passive and active voice.
Interesting. Because in liberal arts, we cite people, especially the first time, and subsequently we also use it. So I am an editor at James Joyce Journal here at the University of Tulsa. So I proofread, these are a journal that I've stayed more than 60 years. James Joyce is a big name in the literary field, especially 20th century. And scholars who submit things, I see it. I don't just want to say, I know that it is this, I see it. But like you kind of pointed out, it might be something it might be something that works for sciences or people in STEM, that they don't use the pronoun. But we use it in humanities and as well in social science, because I do read some social science articles.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And I will also, I promise you, I will look into that. I will go and do some research on STEM. That is not my field anyway, but I will kind of look into that and see, where we can find some overlap.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Any other comment or question? Okay, in the absence of no other question, I appreciate everyone for being organized, being respectful, and acknowledging my workshop, and also attending too. You guys are the heroes here. We are contributing to academic knowledge, and from what we do here, the society can be better. Yeah. I will end the meeting now, and you get the record from Professor Siri as well as the slide, then another materials, and also this exercise that is optional, that I've made optional for anyone who would want to, go through the process with us, because this is a process, it's practical. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a nice class. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. I have to
Thank
run
you,
to
sir.
church now.
Thank you and bye.
I need to be in church in 30 minutes. I
Thank
know most of you
you.
are already
Thank
back
you
from
so
church.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
we're
you,
back.
sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Of sharing this.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
If it is possible, send us video and there's